Now, it's an honor to discuss you very interesting topic and maybe for a little bit difficult material. Today we are going to discuss paper appraisal. As you all know, the paper or the study, it is just a piece of puzzle made of many parts and each part connected to each other to finally give us a complete picture. That's why every piece of the puzzle is very important to get the whole idea. First of all, before I go on my topic today, I want to ask you a very simple question. Who are you? Does it differ? Yes. If you are a reader or a researcher or a reviewer or a writer, all of these are very good candidates for our topic today. But each of them has some points of view and have an idea or another alternative road to reach our subject today. Another very important question, why we need to learn a scientific study? Yes, this is the most important question today. We have to learn or to read to avoid wasting of money on ineffective products and to be able to assess many studies and to know different aspects of the study, such as its credibility, its applicability, and the clinical relevance to the effect reports. Now we have to look for the study and its identification. Very important to go through these points if you are going to read the paper. How to identify your paper. You have to look for bias in the study. Which type of the study you are going to read? What's the reliability, validity, legability? What's the language written of the study? I don't know, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. وصوت حضرتك واضح. And the lecture is being recorded. وعندنا 31 participant.
Great. Now, we have to complete. We talk about language. What about the tables and illustrates? Then the reference citation, and finally, quality of the study. Bias. What bias? Is it important to know this paper has a sort of bias and how to be aware of it and where it comes from? Bias could be a potential unintended or unavoidable effect on the product or on the outcome. And it can come either from the data collector or from the data itself. This is very important. And very important when you are going through the literature, and be very careful and try to check what is the possibility of bias in this paper. And the most important or the easiest way to get the bias in the data collector or the author, the conflict of interest. Conflict of interest must be evaluated carefully. And we have to notice that if does not automatically assume they are not exist just because they are not discussed or disclosed. But also don't assume that they are not necessarily influence the results if they do exist. Be careful. Look at these points and see what's the conflict of disclosure of the author or the authors, and it may interfere with the data collection or the data outcome, and may not, but it's important to see if it is present or absent. But let's jump to another point. What are the types of studies? We have three main types of studies: evidence summarizes, experimental study, and observational study. These are the main three varieties of studies. Regarding the evidence summaries, we have the meta-analysis and systemic overview. Experimental, we have randomized and randomized control trial. And observational study, we have the cohort study, the case control study, and case report. In each study, let us remember the word BEP. What does BEP stands for? P, participant. Who are the participants? Participants are any designated group of individuals. E stands for exposure. What's exposure? Exposure is different in the type of study. In observational study, the exposure is risk factor. While in the experimental study, it is intervention or a drug. All of this done through a time limitation. Time must be conducted carefully and mentioned from 2. The duration of time must be mentioned carefully in the study. This is the 3 points or the 3 characters of the study: participant, exposure, and period. Let's see how all this affect the study. Here we have the main 2 groups, the observational study and the experimental study. And now, from the point of differentiation, let's talk about the exposure. In the observational study, we are discussing risk factor, while in experimental study, we are discussing intervention or a drug. Again, what are the participants? Participants in cohorts in observational study, they are cohort only or cohort group. What are cohort? Cohort, they are designated group of individuals studied for a definite period of time. This is in the cohort study. What is the difference between the cohort study and the case control study? In case control study, we have both exposed group and control group. The same as experimental study, we have exposed group and control group. But the difference lies in the fact that in cohort study, we are discussing risk factor, while in the experimental study, we are discussing intervention or a drug. Both are in definite limited time. In cohort study, as you said, let's take an example. Our example, let us discuss what is the effect of smoking in old people in Egypt on development of lung cancer. Again, the study is effect of smoking in old people in Egypt on the development of lung cancer. Here, what are the participants? The participants are all people in Egypt. This is the participants. What is the risk factor? Smoking. What is the outcome? The lung cancer. This is a definite cohort study. As you see, this is very important point. We discussed, this is our participant, all people in Egypt. All people This is our percipient. And the risk factor, smoking. As you see, this is the risk factor, but old people in Egypt, some of them exposed, means they are, some are smokers and some are non-smokers. You see? And some of the exposed will get positive outcome, developing lung cancer, and others no. While unexposed, some may develop lung cancer and others may not develop lung cancer. This is the cohort study, typical cohort study. What are the cases to make this study as case experimental study? It will differ. Here, we can discuss it as, no. We'll discuss it as comparison between smokers and non-smokers in old men in Egypt in developing lung cancer. Here we have two varieties, smokers and non-smokers. We have control and the participant. What about the case? This is the case control study. What about the randomized control trial? Again, in case control, randomized control trial, we have random assignment of two groups. One of them that will get the drug or the intervention, and the other, the same number or definite number will not get the drug or the intervention. This is the randomized control trial. We have our population and randomly divided into sections. And some of them will get the positive outcome, negative outcome, positive and negative outcome. I think maybe it is clear. Let's go on. What's the best design for clinical study? Randomized clinical trial is the best. But randomized clinical trial may be getting downgrading if the methodology has its limitation. Results were consistent among studies. Trials are indirectly relevant to previous studies. Results were not impressive. And finally, there is bias in the study. Or if these points are present, there will be downgrading of the randomized clinical trial. Okay, this was an introduction to know what's the trial and what type of trial. Now let's go through one study. And as you said previously, the study is one piece of puzzles. Each piece of this puzzle will connect to each other. Let's get the first piece of our puzzle, which is abstract. Abstract is important, but it is enough to read and to know all about the study? No. Abstract is very important, but it is not enough to read it only, because abstract may be an example of misleading, as it does not provide context. It does not often make clear the limitation of the experiment, and finally, results does not show how to be applied in the real world. It is a study. How to apply this study in the real world? I don't know. What the abstract may tell us? It will give us very important information about the author or authors. Who are them? Who is writing the paper? It is one center or multi-center study. Where does the paper published? It gives us a very important idea about the demography of the study, and finally, the design of the study. We can get all this data from the abstract. Let's jump to part number 2, which is the introduction. The introduction is very important too, and it has to clearly identify the research question. As I may discuss before, each study has a certain question. And by the end of the study, this question must be replied. The introduction, it is the way to pave the way for this question. Usually, the author summarized the previous related research and explain why they decided to investigate this topic furtherly. They have a point. What's at this point? We shall know when you are going to read this paper. Again, we have objective from our study. The objective has a very definite, clear question and tell us we are going to answer this question as we can. Let's jump to the most important question. This question lies in this fact. What's the most important part of the study? All the study is important, but what is the most important part? What do you think? What do you imagine? Yes, you're right. The most important part of the study is the methodology. And please remember, don't skip this part when you are reading a paper. It is the most important part. Read it 1, 2, and many times carefully. This is the way to know what will the study tell you. Why it is important? Because it determines the study's strength and limitation, which both affect how the result should be interpreted, and it also affects both the reliability and applicability of that study. I may ask you, what the methods may tell us. The method will tell us many things. The demographics of the study, the co-founders of the study, the design of the study, the time limit, and where the study made, and what are the endpoints of this study. Demography is very important. We have to know the age, the sex, many other points of demography regarding the recipients of the study. What are the co-founders? If there are risk factors interfere in the outcome of the study. What is the design? It is a randomized clinical trial. It is cohort study. What's the design? You have to know it, definitely. And time limit, when this study started and when it ends. Where this study will be done? In a single center, single experience, or in a multi-centric study, which is more and very much better study. And very important point, the study has to have a definite endpoint. And if we have a single endpoint, it will be much better. Why? Single much better, it will make it easy to study and to get the result, and it prevents us from data fishing. What data fishing? What does it mean? That means if you have different endpoints, we can get each one of them and use it for promotion of a drug, for promotion for an intervention. If we have many endpoints, we can get one of them and make up, it is very good drug and as it made so blah, 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 blah. On the other hand, we have other endpoints which are not so good. That's why if we have many endpoints, it may lead the author or the other subjects to make such a data fishing. Collect one or two results or outcomes and make a promotion and propaganda for this result, neglecting the others. That's why if you have single endpoint, it will be much better. I think we have to get a little bit break and try think in these questions. We have 6 questions discussing what we are taught. What is the main hypothesis? The study has its own question or hypothesis. The study has to have such one. What type of study? We have to know what type of the study we are going to discuss. How long did the study last? The duration of the trial. What are the endpoints? What the trial randomized? And talking about randomization, we have single randomized trial when the recipient does know what is taken, either drug or placebo, or double-blinded study, which is much, much better, that both the recipient and investigator do not know which the participant will get, either the control or placebo or the drug. It's much better type of study, double-blind study. Okay, I think maybe it's clear. And now we have to discuss, is the paper applicable? What do you mean by applicability? Applicability means in health and fitness, applicability means that a compound or intervention that may be useful for one person and may not, and may be a waste of money or worse, or a danger for another. Okay? This is you. If we use contraceptive pills will be discussing our sample on certain females in a certain period of time. You see, our sampling here is limited. If we are going to discuss the effect of contraceptive pills on hypertension in female in productive period of life, and you get a result, it has no effect on females. But we have limited sample. That's why this is not a good applicability. Okay, I'm very sorry for the interruption. As we are talking about the hypothesis, and we understand that there's a null hypothesis, which means there's no significant outcome of the trial, and alternative hypothesis, that means that there's a significant outcome of the trial. When we can get positive outcome or significant outcome, when the result will be equal or less than the experimental threshold, which usually chosen as 5% or 0.05. If it is more than this threshold, it is not significant. This is very important, and the author usually wants to clarify his results to go to conclude what is the outcome needed. And this will determine the strength and weakness of this study. Finally, I think you can reach this basic checklist. What is the treatment were given? What demographics were studied? What is the sample size? Are the inclusion and exclusion criteria clarifying? What did the analysis show? And finally, were the results statistically significant? As you are a reader, this will be very enough to get through the study, and you can know if this study is convenient or it is enough to get what you need. But if you are a specialist or a reviewer, you can do all this in a professional way. For example, to determine the quality of the study, use this technique, which is called the Newcastle-Ottawa scale. You can use it as a professional reviewer to get your results. Finally, I thank you all for your attending this talk, and I hope this will help you to go through literature, and you can read the paper and understand what's talking about, and get the most benefit from reading this paper when you are appraising this paper probably. Thank you, and I'm waiting for questions anytime. Have a good day.